Hey, today we're going to be talking about 5 easy ways for you to make your videos look a little more professional. Roll the intro. This video is geared to people who are just starting out, whose videos are just a little off, they're almost there, and they're just missing something. Let's get into it. Number 1 is frame rates. When you watch a movie, when you watch a TV show, they're being broadcasted in 24 frames per second. News, sports, live broadcasting, they're typically broadcasted in a higher frame rate. Having the proper frame rate while you're shooting is maybe one of the most important steps to having a cinematic feel, a cinematic look to all your footage. You want your videos to be in 24 frames per second in its final form. What I want you to do for me right now is put your hand in front of your face and wave it back and forth. You're not seeing your hand perfectly sharp the entire way through. You're seeing your hand blurred as you move it back and forth because that's how human beings see. They don't capture every single frame that 60 frames per second, 30 frames per second in the higher frame rates would capture. So if you want a realistic looking video, you want your frame rate to be at 24, so it's capturing what essentially the human eye would see. How do we achieve a proper frame rate? It's not just setting your camera to 24 frames per second and you're done. We also need to adjust our shutter. The golden rule is that your shutter needs to be double your frame rate. So if your frame rate is at 24 frames per second, you need your shutter to be at 50. A lot of beginners don't understand this rule. Instead of doubling the frame rate with their shutter, they're cranking their shutter up to compromise for exposure. And with photography, that's amazing. You want a super high shutter speed, so you're capturing crisp images. But for video, it's the opposite. Alright, so number 2, we're going to talk about pacing. So what is pacing? The easiest way for me to explain pacing is if you're telling a joke to a friend. You're not going to rush into the joke because then your friend's going to be like, what just happened? But at the other hand, you're not going to take too slow to deliver your punchline because you're going to lose your friend's attention. Let your story build, but at the same time, don't take too long to let your story develop, or you're gonna lose your audience's attention. Beginner filmmakers tend to let their footage drag out. And I'm watching a 5-second clip of someone's hair blowing in the wind, and it's just too slow. Pacing is gonna be different for different styles of videos. If you're filming a hip-hop music video, you're gonna have fast pacing to cut with the beats and cut with the drums. If you have an R&B music video, you want your pacing to be a little more slow and smooth. A lot of epic travel films have fast pacing. So it really depends on what you're shooting. But pacing is very crucial and something is very often overlooked. Now number 3. Number 3 is stabilizing your footage. If you're going handheld with your camera, chances are you're gonna get shake and jitters in your video. There's a difference between a smooth handheld technique where you're purposely holding the camera and making it look like you're in the action, making it look a little more chaotic. It's the unintentional jitters that make your video look unprofessional. Within a month of making videos, I decided I needed a stabilizer and I wanted a cheap one, so I spent $500 on a GlideCam HD 4000, which is this. Camera goes on top here, hold it by the handle, it gives you an extra sense of stability. If you don't have money for a stabilizer and you're just shooting handheld, what a lot of people do is use the neck strap of their camera, put it around their neck, and use that point of tension. So obviously this isn't a DSLR, this is a film camera, but my only DSLR right now is filming this, so I'm gonna use this. It's like a 30-year-old film camera. Put the strap around their neck and use that as a point of contact to smooth out their footage. And they'll create tension with the neck strap and film like this. You can pan up, pan down, pan side to side, do what you need to do. What you shouldn't do is just drop a shaky clip into Adobe Premiere and drop the warp stabilizer on it. A lot of times you get that jelly, funky look to it and it looks super unprofessional right away. And a lot of times when I see that in a video, I'll just turn it off. And it just doesn't look right. It looks like I'd be like, should we move on? You get the point. Don't make your footage shaky unnecessarily. Yeah. Number 4 is changing a focus. If you're new, you're beginning, you're shooting videos on a DSLR, and chances are the autofocus on your DSLR is garbage. There's nothing worse when you're watching a video and the entire time the camera's trying to focus on the subject that the person's shooting and it just doesn't look right, it doesn't look intentional, and makes for a very sloppy video. For the most part, when you're filming on a DSLR, you're gonna wanna keep your camera in manual focus, but you're probably saying like, how do I change my focus? What if I'm moving around? If I'm shooting something with a DSLR, I'm more inclined to bump my f-stop from a 2 to a 3.2 to give myself a little more leeway. If the subject were to move, they still have a couple inches where they can remain in focus. You want to stay equidistant from your subject the entire time so that they stay in focus without you having to change the focus on the camera. Number 5. You're going to want to introduce yourself to a neutral density filter. What is a neutral density filter? This. When I turn this, you can see it goes lighter. The best metaphor for a neutral density filter is it's like sunglasses for your camera lens. You shouldn't be shooting outside in daylight without a neutral density filter. Your frame rate's at 24, you already have your shutter speed down to 50. That means that there's gonna be a lot of light coming into your camera, and when it's daylight, that sun is beating down. Your footage is gonna be way overexposed if you're trying to keep a low aperture. So that's where these come in. You put this on the front of your camera, you adjust your settings for frame rate 24, shutter speed at 50, and if you want your aperture to be at a 2.8 to create a shallow depth of field or whatever you have it on, to create that blurred effect with the background, have your subject only in focus, you hook this on and you adjust for exposure this way. See that? Isn't that? It's pretty cool. A rookie mistake is people crank their f-stop all the way up and everything's in focus and it just looks like a really flat image and that there's no depth. You need a neutral density filter, I promise you that. I'll put a link in the description below of where you can find the best one for your camera. We got a bonus, number 6. I was contemplating putting this in or making a separate video for it. I want to talk about sound design. Sound design is one of the most important factors of your videos and it's something that barely anybody does. I'm gonna play a side-by-side video of my trip to Uganda with sound design and without. Without sound design first and then with sound design. This is with sound design. You want to make your viewer feel like that they're actually there in the moment. I get my sounds from YouTube, freesound.org, whatever you need. I'll put links in the description. Alright, that's it for today, guys. I hope that was quick, concise. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Suggestions for future videos, put them in the comments below. If this was too fast for you, let me know and I will make a separate video for an individual topic covering way more ground because I know I just kind of glanced over everything. I hope you take these 5 tips, apply them to your videos. If you want to show me your videos, send them to me. I'll put my email in the description below. We'll talk about it, see what you can improve on, see what you did really well, etc. Thank you and have a beautiful rest of your day, and we'll meet next time. It won't be too long, I swear. Goodbyes are hard, guys. Goodbyes are hard. That's pretty much it. Roll end screen.